Nama Om Vishnupada Krishna Presta Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadeshitarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha Paditanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, devotees, so last night we concluded with verse 19, in which Lord Krishna concludes the discussion about the people who do surrender, the people who don't surrender, who won't surrender, who can't surrender, but particularly those who become devotees but they're on 4 levels. Anyway, we explained about that at some length. Out of the 4 types, the Jnana Bhakta, the one who's sincerely trying to understand Krishna and how to approach Krishna, and like this is the best one, very, very special and very dear to the Lord. And that person, after cultivating knowledge about the Lord for many lifetimes, Bahunam Janmanam Ante, Krishna said, many births and deaths, finally, clearly understands, Krishna is the cause of all causes and of all that be. And therefore the person surrenders and comes to the level of completely pure devotional service. So now, beginning with verse 20, there is quite a change of theme. Lord Krishna now, at least particularly from this verse 20 where we're starting, through to verse 25, the Lord is talking about different types of people who have little knowledge or even no knowledge. But first of all, people who have just a little knowledge and therefore they cannot understand things sufficiently, and generally they're certainly not really successful to come to the level of pure devotional service. So, this is from verse 20 to 25, but there are 2 subsections. The first subsection is from 20 to 23, and it's focusing on demigod worshippers. They get all caught up in worship of the demigods. Anyway, let us read verses 20 to 23, just the verses as we're normally doing now. And then we'll go back and just go through a little bit the purports and look a little more deeply at these verses. So, verse 20, those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires, surrender unto demigods, and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. We'll come back to that. It's very interesting, but we'll come back. 21. I'm in everyone's heart as the super soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. Yes. So, the Lord does not really approve, as we will see just now, but it's a lot better than just being an outright atheist. So the Lord helps. Actually, whatever we desire, generally, the Lord helps. So 22, endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. Oh, just see. Yeah. And 23, men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. Okay, so let us go through each verse a little bit. 20, those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Well, you remember, I don't know if you remember, in chapter 3, there was a brief discussion. It was in the context of coming to the point of worshiping the Supreme Lord. The all-pervading transcendence is situated in acts of sacrifice. So there are different stages, and sacrifice to the demigods is one stage on the way to sacrifice or service for Krishna. Here this is talking more, though, in this 7th chapter, talking more about people who just see demigod worship as an end in itself. They feel that you don't need to do more. That's like there's perfection there. But it's not right. These people are not very intelligent. And Krishna explains that they surrender to particular demigods, not to all the demigods, but some particular demigod, or maybe a couple. It depends on what they want. Because, of course, as I'm sure so many of you are well aware, different demigods supply different things. Just like in the Govardhan Leela, which is coming up, well, in about 6 or 8 weeks. In the Govardhan Leela, the Brijbasis, Nanda Maharaj and his associates, they were doing a sacrifice for Indra Yagya, because Indra supplies rain. And they are farming people, and for farming, rain is very much required. So therefore they worshipped Indra, but they didn't, for example, worship, who shall we say? They didn't worship Saraswati. Saraswati gives knowledge. means material knowledge. School children worship Saraswati, generally, school children, because they need knowledge. But these big adults like Nanda Maharaj and company, they're way beyond school, and they're working hard in their businesses, their farming business. For that, they need rain, so they didn't worship Saraswati, they worshipped Indra. And you know the story of the Govardhan Leela. So these people then, they're driven by material desires. They're focused on what they want in the material world. And they know that whatever they want is supplied by some particular demigod. So they worship that demigod. And they don't worship other demigods who supply other things. This is how it works. So therefore Krishna says like this: their intelligence is stolen by material desire, of course, and they surrender to demigods and follow the particular program, rules and regulations for worshipping that demigod according to their own natures. It's all just very relative in terms of their particular desires within this world. So, the devotees, of course, they don't see things like that. The devotees, they know that we only want to please Krishna, and we'll depend on Krishna. Let him give us or take from us. As long as we please Krishna, that's all we're interested in. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport: therefore a pure devotee never goes to demigods for satisfaction of his material needs. He depends on the Supreme Lord, and the pure devotee is satisfied with whatever he, the Lord, gives. Yes. So they just depend on Krishna. This is the pure devotees. They depend on Krishna, and they don't even want to bother Krishna that, I could use this, I could use that. But Krishna knows better than me what I need. So let Krishna give it. This is a pure devotee, of course. So we carry on then. Verse 21. I'm in everyone's heart as the super soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. So, if anyone were to ask why does Krishna do this? Why doesn't he just leave them to just, do their best? Why does he help them to do something which ultimately is not the right thing? Well, Prabhupada does talk about this. If we look in the purport here, it is, what is it? It's just the second sentence. Yeah. Well, let's just read a little from the beginning of the purport. God has given independence to everyone. Therefore, if a person desires to have material enjoyment and wants very sincerely to have such facilities from the material demigods, the Supreme Lord as Super Soul in everyone's heart understands and gives facilities to such persons. As the Supreme Father of all living entities, he does not interfere with their independence, but gives all facilities so that they can fulfill their material desires. And Prabhupada continues, people may ask, why does the Lord give facility to the living entities to enjoy so they can fall into the trap of Maya? The answer is that if the Lord as Supersoul doesn't give such facilities, then there's no meaning to independence. Therefore, he gives everyone full independence, whatever one likes. But his ultimate instruction is there that we should surrender to the Lord. Anyway, yeah, like that. So, in the second paragraph, let's just have a look here, what's going on here. Well, Prabhupada concludes the paragraph. In the Vedic literature it's stated, the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Supersoul is also present within the heart of the demigod. Therefore he arranges through the demigod to fulfill the desire of the living entity. But both the demigod and the living entity are dependent on the supreme will. They're not independent. And 22, endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. Isn't it just ironic or chronic even? Krishna's really showing that actually this is a type of foolishness. They should really just approach him. It's a kind of cheating process, really. So, the demigods, they cannot give blessings or they cannot help without Krishna's permission. The demigods know that they're only able to give things by Krishna's mercy. Pure devotees, they don't do like this. They definitely don't. Prabhupada mentions in a verse here, it's from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's just referred to in the first paragraph. The verse says, this is the actual verse, if those who desire material enjoyment or merging into the existence of the absolute truth, so if those people engage in the Lord's transcendental loving service, they will immediately attain shelter at Krishna's lotus feet, although they did not ask for it. Krishna is therefore very merciful. Of course, a classic example is Dhruva Maharaj, that he wasn't asking for Krishna's shelter as such. He was asking for a kingdom from Krishna. He wanted something material. He didn't want to take shelter and become a humble devotee. He had a different desire. But Krishna gave him his shelter. Just see, Krishna's very merciful. Even sometimes, at least, Krishna gives mercy even though people don't want it. And Prabhupada concludes the purport, for the living entity who desires to return to Godhead, material desires are impediments. A pure devotee of the Lord is therefore not awarded the material benefits desired by less intelligent living entities, who therefore prefer to worship demigods of the material world rather than engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Yes, so the devotees, it varies, it depends, but in many cases the devotees do not get the material things that the demigod worshippers get. And therefore, many people prefer to worship demigods rather than worship Krishna. There's a famous verse, I forget the Sanskrit, but anyway, the verse says, Krishna's speaking, if I really like someone, I take everything away from him. So some devotees, maybe they pray, Krishna, don't like me too much. Please don't like me too much. I'm not so nice. But in Mahabharata, there's an incident in which Maharaj Yudhisthira approaches Lord Krishna, and Maharaj Yudhisthira says, my Lord, please give me lots of money. Lots of money. And Krishna said, what? What do you want money for? I thought you only wanted devotional service. And Maharaj Yudhisthira said, no, I want lots of money and a kingdom and palaces and servants. I want all these things. And Lord Krishna became disappointed that, I thought all you wanted was to serve me. And Yudhisthira said, no, I want everything, material things. But then Maharaj Yudhisthira explained that there's so many people, they don't want to surrender to you, my Lord, because they think that you're going to take things away. So I want them to see that here is one of your devotees who has so many material things. And then they'll think, yes, we must surrender to Krishna, and they'll become devotees. Anyway, but generally the devotees don't bother with that at all. Yeah. And verse 23, and this is a good one. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. So it is interesting, in the Sanskrit, in the verse itself, Lord Krishna uses the term alpa medasam. Alpa means small, little, and medasa means intelligence. Alpa medasa means someone who has small intelligence. This is what Krishna says here. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Whereas for the devotees, their fruits, so to speak, the results of their devotional service, they get Krishna's mercy, they go back to Godhead for eternal life full of bliss and full of knowledge. So you can see the devotees are really much more intelligent. Yes, so Prabhupada in the purport does make some mention of how in Hinduism, I guess you'd say, you get a lot of people, however many people you get, who think you can worship anyone and get the same result. You become a devotee of Krishna, you worship Krishna, you go to Goloka Vrindavan. You worship Durga, you go to Goloka Vrindavan. You worship Lord Shiva, you go to Goloka Vrindavan. You worship Madraviran, you go back to Goloka Vrindavan. But no, Prabhupada in the purport here of 23, he discusses this a little, that, it's not that all roads lead to Rome. Different roads lead to different places. So, the path of Krishna consciousness leads to Goloka Vrindavan. But, as Krishna says here, those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods. So those who worship Lord Shiva, they go to the planet of Shiva. And those who worship Durga, they go to Durga Loka. And it works like that. So Srila Prabhupada makes the point here at the end of the purport. Because the pure devotee engaged in Krishna consciousness and in devotional service of the Supreme Lord achieves eternal blissful existence that is full of knowledge, his achievements and those of the common worshipper of the demigods are different. The Supreme Lord is unlimited. His favor is unlimited. His mercy is unlimited. Therefore, the mercy of the Supreme Lord upon his pure devotees is unlimited. That's very nice. All right, so that was the demigods, not intelligent, not achieving what really should be achieved, not achieving what they could achieve. How about the impersonalists? This is another group of people who don't have enough knowledge. And because they don't have enough knowledge, they don't achieve the goal of life. Just like we read yesterday, particularly towards the end, we read about the Jnana Bhakta, the devotee, the person who's dedicated to Krishna, and particularly in the mood, I want to understand him, I want to know him, and I want to know how to approach him like this. So he was the Jnana Bhakta. He was a devotee, but particularly a devotee in search of knowledge with a burning desire for knowledge, and he achieved the goal eventually. But these people, the demigod worshippers and now the impersonalists, they just don't have the right knowledge. Knowledge is very important. It's extremely important to understand the truth. And then you can act properly, and your whole life can be proper. So the demigod worshippers, unfortunately, they can't do that. And similarly, the impersonalists, they don't have proper knowledge, and so they miss the point. So there are two verses here, 24 and 25. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme, due to their small knowledge. Now, I want to point out something here. I want to point out something in the verse. We just looked at the previous verse, the Sanskrit, a little bit of the Sanskrit. Alpamedasa. Alpamedasa. Alpa meaning small. When you go to Mayapur next, whenever that may be. But when you go and they're serving prasadam, you know, in the prasadam hall, and you're sitting down and the devotees come by and they serve, and you don't want to get too much, so you may try and speak in English, you know, just a little, but they may not understand English. It's Bengal. They're Bengalis. So you try it next time. Put your hand out and say, Alpo, Alpo. Alpo, Alpo. And they'll respond, oh, okay. Because it's Sanskrit. It's here in Bhagavad Gita. But it's in, at least it's in Bengali. Is it in Hindi also? Or just Toda? Toda say. Anyway, it's in Bengali, Alpo. But now, okay, so yeah, we pointed that out, that the demigod worshippers were Alpamedasa, small knowledge, just a little knowledge. Here in this verse, in the Sanskrit, if you have a look at the verse, in the second line, Manyante Mam Abudaya. Abudaya. Buddhi, we already spoke about Buddhi Yoga back, you know, in a few places, second chapter maybe particularly. So Buddhi means intelligence. And a person who is Buddhaya is an intelligent person. But these people, the impersonalists, Krishna says, they are abudaya. They have no intelligence. No intelligence. Not just a little, but they have none. So they're the worst. They're worse than the demigods, demigod worshippers. Yeah. So, that's 24. Okay, so that's 24. Let me just read 24 again, and then I'll read 25. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, was impersonal before, and have now assumed this personality due to their small knowledge. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. And I should have... Anyway, here we go, verse 25, and then we'll go back to 24 again. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. Yes. Well, what to say here? What to say here? Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada quotes Ishopanishad, quotes Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada, let's just read this verse from Ishopanishad. Verse 15. O my Lord, you're the maintainer of the entire universe, and devotional service to you is the highest principle, highest religious principle. Therefore I pray that you will also maintain me. Your transcendental form is covered by the Yoga Maya. The Brahmajyoti is the covering of the internal potency. May you kindly remove this glowing effulgence that impedes my seeing your Satchitananda Vigraha. Okay, that's interesting. In 25, well, hang on a second, let's just have a look. I shouldn't have jumped forward like that. Anyway, basically, though, the problem is the impersonalists have no intelligence, and they're just in hopeless conditions. And as stated in 25, Krishna has actually covered them by his deluding energy. It's interesting, in the Sanskrit of verse 25, the Lord uses the term Yogamaya, Samavrita. Samavrita meaning covered. That I have covered them by my Yogamaya. Normally, of course, we use the term Yogamaya in regard to the devotees of Vrindavan. They're covered by that type of illusion which makes them forget that Krishna is God. But it's not that they think he's nobody. They love him. They think he's the most wonderful, lovable person. We talked about this in Nectar of Devotion. Because their love is so great, they see him just as their friend, or their child, or their lover. And they love him like that. And to be God? No, no, no. Generally they think, not him. That's Yogamaya. But here Krishna's used the term Yogamaya for that potency which has covered the intelligence and the vision of the impersonalists, so that they can't recognize him. So whichever way, Mahamaya, Yogamaya, the basic idea is that these people are put in ignorance. And in Ishopanishad, that verse that we read, the term Yogamaya is used there also for that dazzling covering which the devotee cannot see through. Although he knows the Lord is behind it and he wants to see the Lord. So he prays to the Lord, please remove that Yogamaya. So one way or the other, it's illusion which obscures the nature of the Lord. So we go on now to the last section, from verse 26 to verse 30. We call it the bewilderment of the living entity and his freedom through knowledge of Krishna. So it's 26 to 30. The first little subsection is verses 26 and 27, in which basically Krishna contrasts his nature with the nature of the conditioned souls. 26 and 27. Let's just read the two of them. O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that's happened in the past. all that's happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me no one knows. And then verse 27, because Krishna knows everyone and everything, but nobody knows Krishna. Why? 27 talks about it. O scion of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities, arisen from desire and hate. So let's just have a little look through these verses. Well, one point that Prabhupada makes in the purport of 26 is that Krishna is not an ordinary person like us, as the impersonalists think. And one way to understand, one reason for that, is that he doesn't change his body. Prabhupada says here, it's the second sentence of the purport of verse 26, that if Krishna, the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, were Maya, material as the impersonalists consider him to be, then, like the living entity, like us, he would change his body and forget everything about his past life. Anyone with a material body cannot remember his past life, nor can he foretell his future life, of course, or predict the outcome of this life. Therefore he can't know past, present, and future. And the reason, at least in this context here, the reason, or one of the main reasons for that, is that we change our bodies. And because our bodies change, the consciousness, our consciousness which is attached to the body, our consciousness changes. Therefore we forget. Therefore we forget. It's a subtle but interesting point, and this is what Prabhupada is saying here, that we cannot remember our past lives, certainly before this actual lifetime, but we can't even remember this lifetime so much. Not so much. Definitely not like it's clear that we can remember exactly what we did on this day 10 years ago, for example, what to speak of, many more years ago if you're older. The body is changed, and the consciousness which is attached to the body, it changes. Therefore we tend to live a lot, at least, more or less in the present. But Krishna, he knows all these things on a massive scale. On what a scale! It's incredible. Just like in the 4th chapter, you remember right at the beginning, Krishna said, I spoke the same knowledge to Vivasvan. Long time ago, really long time. And Prabhupada mentions that the understanding is Arjuna was there also. But Krishna says, I can remember that, but you cannot. So this is a very important point. Maya can cover us, but Maya cannot cover Krishna. He's always above Maya. Yes. And like we read in the previous verse about the impersonalist, Krishna chooses to take away their intelligence or cover their intelligence. He chooses to do that. Okay. Then now we have a special question here for those of you who are doing Bhakti Shastri, based on this verse. And it's in a verse. Srimad Bhagavatam, write this down, 8.3.26. 8.3.26. Now, fully desiring release from material life, I offer my respectful obeisances unto that Supreme Person who's the creator of the universe, who is himself the form of the universe, and who is nonetheless transcendental to this cosmic manifestation. He is the supreme knower of everything in this world, the super soul of the universe. He is the unborn, supremely situated Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Wow, what is this now? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I mentioned, was it? It was yesterday. Well, no. Yeah, it was yesterday. About how there are examples of those four categories of pious people who may surrender to Krishna: the distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and those who are really in search of knowledge of the Absolute. So do you remember, devotees? Oh, Krishna. We lost it. I'm sorry. We have lost the Zoom. Oh, the Zoom is back. Are you okay? I will take it that you are, and carry on. All right. It'll have to be. Oh, I see. Are you okay? You're okay there? Продолжаем. Okay, yes. So where were we? Yeah. So do you remember, who was the example, classic example from Srimad Bhagavatam of someone who approached the Lord out of distress? Anyone here remember? Jai Sachinandan Prabhu, who knows so many things. Yes, it was Gajendra. Now this verse we just read, 8.3.26, is spoken by who? By Gajendra. So that's the question. Who spoke the verse? Okay. All right, 27. O scion of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities, arisen from desire and hate. Now, you may remember back in the beginning of the chapter, was it verse 3, wasn't it? Oh, no, it wasn't actually. But it was right back there somewhere. Oh, no, it was verse 15, yeah. About the people who don't surrender. Oh, no, it's not. Anyway, it's a verse we read. Oh, I forget exactly which verse it was, in which it was stated that people are deluded by the three modes of material nature. Yeah, I can't remember the actual verse number offhand, sorry. Yeah, but deluded by the three modes of material nature. And part of that delusion is that they're prone to desire things, they want things, and then they hate things. They're attracted, they're repulsed under the influence of the modes of nature. Yes, so in this verse 27, this is the point here. And Prabhupada explains, when a person is deluded by it's the second sentence of the purport, when one is deluded into separation from pure knowledge, he becomes controlled by the illusory energy and cannot understand the Supreme Lord. And this illusory energy is manifested in the duality of desire and hate. So Srila Prabhupada says, those who are deluded by duality and nescience think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is created by material energies. This is their misfortune. Such deluded persons symptomatically dwell in dualities of dishonor and honor, misery and happiness, woman and man, good and bad, pleasure and pain, etc., thinking, this is my wife, this is my house, I'm the master of this house, I'm the husband of this wife. These are the dualities of delusion. Those who are so deluded by dualities are completely foolish and therefore cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada explains elsewhere, this is from a class of Prabhupada's, small mudhas are working hard only to become happy, and the big mudha, if you remember, mudha means fool. The big mudha, the big fool, wants to become God. The small mudha wants to become a minister or a president, and the big mudha wants to become God. The disease is the same. I shall become the most powerful. But that is not possible. Only Krishna is the most powerful. Verse 28. So now here in this verse, Krishna is explaining who can become free of all this. Who can become free of this ignorance, this illusion, the control of the modes, and the influence of the modes to make us attracted and averse, for and against. 28. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So those eligible for elevation to the transcendental platform are mentioned here, and Srila Prabhupada in the first paragraph makes the point that, what does he say? Yeah, in the third sentence, only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service. Well, does that apply to you? Does it apply to me? That we have accepted devotional service because we passed our lives practicing the regulative principles, acting piously. We conquered our sinful reactions. Well, I don't know about you, but it doesn't apply to me. Oh my gosh, it's quite phenomenal, actually. So, but by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, who is the deliverer, he's Patitapavan, the deliverer of the most fallen, we have come to devotional service despite our backgrounds. But otherwise, generally, in the old system before Lord Chaitanya, it was only people who really lived very piously and nicely and so on, following the yoga ladder step by step, gradually becoming elevated. They might become devotees. But now it's a little different by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So, yes, and here is another type of person who wants, well, anyway, let's just read it. This is a Yoga Mishra type of person. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They're actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities. So, it appears to be a fifth type of person who approaches the Lord. And verse 30, those in full consciousness of me, who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation, of the demigods, and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. So, they know Krishna in three particular ways, which is, it's all there in the Sanskrit. It's all there in the Sanskrit. Yes. They know Krishna as Adibhuta, the governing principle of the material manifestation. Adidaiva, governing all the demigods. And Adiyagya, governing all sacrifices. What does this remind you of? Can any of you think? What does this remind you of? They understand Krishna as the governing principle of the material manifestation, governing the demigods, governing the sacrifices. Does that remind you of the peace formula? The peace formula. It's a very similar, practically the same idea. That was the end of chapter 5. Yeah. Knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities. That's what was just said, Adiyagya. The Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods. The governing all the manifestations, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all the living entities. Yeah. Governing all the demigods, because the demigods are generally perceived to be or conceived to be benefactors. We worship the demigods, we get things. They're benefactors. But Krishna is governing the demigods. So it's basically the same sort of idea as the last verse of the 5th chapter. So a person who's like this can approach Krishna. And so this is the last verse, of course, of this chapter, and Prabhupada concludes that this person, the devotee, is convinced that by doing so, engaging himself in Krishna's service, all his objectives will be fulfilled. This determined faith is called Dridhavrata, and it's the beginning of Bhakti Yoga or transcendental loving service. That is the verdict of all scriptures. This 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is the substance of that conviction in different ways. Yeah. All right. So yes, such a person can know Krishna even at the time of death. And this idea of knowing Krishna at the time of death, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. This idea of knowing Krishna at the time of death, we're going to see in chapter 8, which will start tomorrow. It's basically the theme. In one way or another, it's the theme of chapter 8, how to know Krishna at the time of death. So here Krishna concluded this the chapter with this verse, that people who understand Krishna in these ways can understand and know him even at the time of death. This is leading us into chapter 8. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.